how to balance the new, the now, and the next. It's time to go beyond the status quo, it's time to innovate. Please welcome to the stage John Encizo, Infrastructure Solutions Field CTO at Lenovo, to present Beyond Horizons, the next frontier in innovation.
Right, thank you everybody. Clarify, I said I make sexy plumbing. I am not a sexy plumber. My wife would never agree to that statement. So again, thank you everybody for coming and spending some time with me. What I'd like to do is I want to kind of make sure, like I talked about earlier, one thing I do every time I talk to customers is if you walk away and all you've done is you've listened to our words and you've been to all the booths and you walk away with some really cool ideas around really cool technology, that's great, but you've missed the point. What I want to talk about is what I call transformation and innovation. And I really want you guys to be thinking. You're going to see questions and quotes peppered throughout this presentation. You'll get the presentation. Take these questions home because these are going to help you actually drive that innovation conversation. And I always like to start with this quote. It's touchy, from William Gibson. If you don't know who William Gibson is, he's a futurist author. So anybody here ever seen Minority Report? Right? Those are kind of his things. And I love this quote, that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed yet. And here's what that means. If we think about transformation and we think about innovation, one of the things that I find from an innovation perspective is when I think about just what I'm doing today, and I just look at my competitors, that's not how I drive innovation. The future's already here. Somebody else is doing something in an industry related to me, and doing something somewhere else. And that's how I get to innovation. Steve brought up Netflix. If you think about Netflix was solving a distribution problem. They weren't solving a problem about renting DVDs. They were solving a distribution problem. They looked beyond to have that conversation. So the future's already here. So throughout everything we talk about, everything I'm going to say today, be thinking about not just what you do. Talk to each other. Find out how you're innovating in your organizations and look at the adjacencies. That's how we start. I wanted to start with this slide. This is what I call the big things that are coming in 2025. Major disruptions. Security, Steve already mentioned. AI is here. AI is now being leveraged by the bad guys in ways you have not had it happen yet. I just read an article, I think it was yesterday, I can't remember, but it was an HR person that was doing an interview, and it was only 20 minutes into the interview when she realized she wasn't actually interviewing a human being. Someone had created an avatar, plumbed it through a language model, stuck a RAG database behind it, and she was actually interviewing an AI avatar that someone was using to try and get a job. Imagine that. If you guys think back, I think it was last year, might have been the year before, someone spoofed the CFO of a company to have them transfer millions of dollars out of their organization. So AI and security go together. Now, if you're looking at the bottom of the pyramid, I'm going to start there, and you may be going, John, why is power and cooling a disruption? Here's some fun little factoids. And again, this goes back to thinking differently. Today, when we start thinking about things like AI at the top of the iceberg, AI being delivered at scale, the power requirements are unbelievable. NVIDIA announced their DGX platform at GTC. 120 kilowatts in one rack. I'm an old guy. I have an AI server that's an entry-level 4 GPU AI server. It's 5 kilowatts. One server. I'm old enough, as I see many of you out there are, to remember when 5 kilowatts was my whole data center. Right? Power and cooling are going to become constraints going forward. And so reimagining how you deliver IT is going to start to become critically important. ROI of AI. I'm going to jump around the iceberg. Why is this important? I gave this conversation at our sales kickoff last week, and I talked about this is the year where AI is actually having to be grounded in reality. The science experiments are over, and I mentioned this, and I got about 50 memes after I said this. This is the revenge of the CFO. So imagine a Sith Lord, that's an accountant, right? This is what we're seeing right now. It's the revenge of the CFO. Great, you've talked about AI, now actually let's make some money with it. This is what we're seeing. And that ties to business efficacy and operational efficiency. Two things that every leader needs to be thinking about. How do you drive cost out of the business and bring money into the business? This is what IT's job is. And the way you do that is you bring data everywhere. If you are not putting data in the hands of your users to drive innovation, you're going it alone. Right? What's the old saying? Succeed together and fail alone. If IT is not putting data in the hands of the people that need it, what are we doing? And so all of this comes back to how do we drive these innovations? So, the more things change, the more they stay the same. What does IT do? Everybody's like, oh, well, we deploy laptops, we have images, we do cloud, we do... No. This is what IT's fundamental role is. Create an end user and internal user experience. Take data to drive insight. Govern our IP, that's our critical assets. And use those three to drive innovation. This is what we do. Everything else is a symptom. If we're not doing this and we're not thinking about how we do this, we're running in place. Innovation is to think in these ways. How am I driving these things out? Because at the end of the day, nothing's changed. I'm an old guy. I remember when green screens were connected, which is like the old-fashioned cloud for those that don't know what a mainframe connected to a green screen is. But nothing's changed. The same jobs are there. What does that mean? That means the role of IT needs to change. Steve brought it up. If you're not engaged with your business stakeholders, finding out what your end users actually want and need, how are you ever going to drive innovation? Succeed together, fail alone. I had a great conversation with the CIO of a healthcare system. And anybody here ever worked in healthcare, you'll know that there's this concept, or you watch the thousands of TV shows. You've seen grand rounds, right, where the physicians walk around. He said he does grand rounds because he wants to know what his stakeholders are trying to solve. He goes and talks to the leader of every single ology, if you don't know what that means, like oncology, hematology, et cetera, et cetera. He talks to all of those leaders. How am I doing? Give me my scorecard. What are we not doing? What do you want us to do better? What's keeping your people from being more productive? It's bringing those stakeholders in and giving them data. Why? That's how they can drive innovation. So a couple things I want you guys to start getting out of. You've heard me say, I brought it up earlier, start with why. These are the hard questions. First thing, and I like to call this, anybody here ever been backpacking? Right? So I've done some backpacking. I'll tell you a real quick story before I go on with this. So we were backpacking in Alaska along the side of a glacier. We knew where we had to be. And it's end of season. It's raining. It's cold, it's miserable, there's bear scat out, and we're thinking about, we just really want to pitch our tents and be done. And we're wandering, and we keep seeing our ostensible guide looking at his GPS, and this is old school, so this is when it was just a GPS, and he keeps looking at it and looking around, and finally somebody walks up and says, "Dude, what's the problem?" He goes, "Well, I can't figure out where the trail is." And somebody looks over his shoulder, and it's a blue dot on a grid pattern. There's no map. And they went, "Where's the map?" He goes, "Well, I didn't download it. I figured we'd just use this like a glorified compass." And we were like, "Well, do you even know where we are?" "Well, we're kind of here on the..." Right? If you don't know where you are, how are you going to get where you need to be? So ask that question. How do your end users see you? Anybody here ever read the Dilbert comics, right? Are you seen as the ministry of no? Because if you are not seen as an innovation engine. You're seen as a hindrance. So start thinking about, how do your end users see you? Some questions for you to be thinking about. Again, I'm not going to read these. You'll get these. You need to have a hard, realistic look at the organization, at how you deliver IT. Every organization, IT is the heart. Your data is the blood. But everything else is the rest of the business. And if your organization looks at you and thinks, "Yeah, don't go to IT, they'll slow things down," how are you ever going to drive innovation? So I want to talk a little bit about what I call the CIO's dilemma. And this is one of the ways I think about driving leadership, driving innovation, driving critical thinking. How many people here, I think it's in my contract, I have to mention two things in every talk. I have to talk about Broadcom and I have to talk about AI. So how many people here have run VMware and now they're like, "Oh my God, I have to figure out how to get out of that, it's too expensive"? Yeah, a bunch of people have raised their hands, right? One of the things I do when I talk to customers and I do workshops with them, I talk about this, every piece of technology, every innovation, I always bring it back to time, money, and risk. Why? 2025 is the revenge of the CFO. No CFO cares why you should shift from VMware to something else or cares why you should re-up your VMware license. They go, how much does it cost? What's the impact to the business? Time, money, and risk. How do I articulate the value of IT to the business? And I've got a whole list of books at the end. There's a great book called What the CEO Wants You to Know. If you haven't read it, put it on your reading list. It's like an MBA in 160 pages. And it helps you think about articulating these things. New, now, and next. When we think about innovation, this is the new, now, and next problem. How do I solve for today? How do I figure out where my 18, 24-month plan is? And then how do I work with my stakeholders to reimagine the future? This is where we need to be thinking in the back of our minds. Through the time, money, and risk. The more of these you solve, the bigger that value becomes for the organization. All of these are the things that you need to be thinking through. Questions so far? I always like to ask questions. Otherwise, I feel like I'm proselytizing to a set of unbelievers, right? Any questions so far? Obviously not enough caffeine yet this morning. We'll get there, I promise. So how do you actually modernize? You need to modernize because if you don't modernize, you're going to spend all of your time dealing with legacy infrastructure, dealing with legacy problems. And this is where you need to work with the folks from QuadBridge to help, right? You need to think about your data. Everybody wants to talk about AI. Guess what the unspoken secret is about AI? AI is an accelerant. You pour it on good data, well-defined, understood business processes, and it drives innovation and it drives change. You pour it on really bad data, poorly understood problems, badly documented processes, it's an accelerant. It creates a dumpster fire, just faster. All AI starts with understanding your data, understanding the operational procedures. Why do people actually do what they're doing? I had a conversation with a CIO at a DIY store, and he was telling me they rolled out this amazing AI project. The CEO had come and said, hey, I need you to roll this project out. Here's the problem we're trying to solve. And they built this beautiful thing. And then they rolled it out to all the end users in the stores. And they went and they were like, they kept looking at the utilization rates. And they walked to the store and they said, why aren't you guys using this? And they looked at him and said, because this doesn't solve a problem that I have. Because they didn't understand what the business was actually doing. They thought they knew what they needed. They didn't actually ask. Understand the operational procedures. Reimagine your infrastructure. And infrastructure is that sexy plumbing that I make. Right? Not just fancy laptops, fancy servers, fancy storage. It's everything. It's everything that moves data and delivers applications. This is important. Right? Think about IT, deconstruct IT as if it were its own business. That's one way to start thinking about how to innovate in your own organization. Think of your IT organization as a small business inside a larger business. If you do that, that's how you can start figuring out how to innovate yourself. And once you start innovating internally in IT, you now have a place to stand and say, look what we did. Let us help you. Tell us what you need. Right? So how are you investing resources? I have multiple degrees in many things related to none of which are related to IT because I'm an old guy. But words are important. And notice the word I use here. How are you investing your resources? Your time, your money, your people. Why is that important? Most folks I talk to, this is where 70% of people spend their time. The now. I'm an old guy. Friday nights used to be the nights that we did patch updates, because if something broke, we had the weekend to fix it. Because, we're IT, we like to be miserable. So 70% of us, if it's not broken, we don't try and fix it. Which is why, anybody here done an application assessment in their organization? Right? Anybody here, you've done an application assessment, and then you have this application, and you're like, who owns this? Nobody knows. What does it do? Nobody knows. It's not broken, so nobody turned it off. We just keep patching it and paying for it. Right? If this is where you're spending all your time, you're never going to make the jump to innovation. A lot of us, though, we go, okay, John, I'm done. I'm not just preserving. I'm looking at going and I'm optimizing how I spend my money, how we spend our time. That is great. You are making things move better. You are making a better buggy whip. You now, to use the Blockbuster analogy, so I'm old. Remember when there used to be VHS tape rewinders, right? You're making VHS tape rewinders. For those who don't know what a VHS is, well, I don't even know how to explain that. It's like a really big cassette tape for movies. Wow. God, I'm old. So it's optimization. So some of you are like, John, I'm not optimizing. I am bringing new technology into the business. That's great. You're changing what your people are doing. You're starting to reimagine how you can deliver IT services, but you're still not actually innovating. Because innovating is creating platforms for the business to build new capabilities on top of in different ways. Because here's the piece that I always like to talk to. Unless you are truly a technology company, I am. ServiceNow is. Microsoft is. Your product enables the process for the business to make money. You guys have to understand. The business is funding you guys to deliver those things we talked about. It doesn't fund IT services because the CEO wants a new laptop. They fund it because they want business results. Speak to the CFO level. That is how you get projects funded. That's how you start thinking about innovation. So let's talk about kind of the next. So this is what I call the transformation journey. Some of this is delving into critical thinking, but this is how you start arriving at innovation. If you're so busy solving today's problems, you can't look over the horizon. I call this my transformation journey. Wayfinding 101, right? Don't be the guy that's looking at the blue dot. Find out where you are. Anybody here have enterprise architecture in your organization, or is an enterprise architect, or talks to enterprise architecture? Okay. For those that don't know what enterprise architecture is, it's a way to attach all of the different technologies together to understand the map and attach that to the business. That's how you get a view of what IT is doing. And then you have to bring all of your stakeholders in and stop talking about the brand new NVIDIA H200 NVL GPU that'll do AI. You need to talk about what kind of things do you want AI to do for you? So it's work backwards. This concept of data gravity. Anybody here know what data gravity is? Okay, for those that don't know, remember like those grade school science projects where you had like the model of the solar system where you had a sun and the planets revolved around it? So here's what data gravity is, and this is there's data gravity drives application gravity. Wherever the core business systems are that have the critical IT assets, the IT data of your business, go look at those systems. They have a set of data that you're going to find lots of your applications and business processes attached to. That data gravity should be driving your data strategy. Because if you don't have a data strategy, you can't have an AI strategy. You can't have a modernization strategy, and you can't put data into the hands of your users to drive innovation. So that's find where you are. Compound returns. What did Einstein say? One of the most powerful laws in the universe, right? Compound interest. The way that you get to be able to move from where you are today to where you need to be tomorrow is doing things like automate. How many people here, that's okay, you don't have to raise your hand, still have checklists and still have lots of processes that people are manually doing? Right? If you have that, that's keeping you from moving forward. Next thing is think about standardizing. I have this conversation with some of my big customers. They're like, I want this Micron drive, and I want this Samsung memory, and I want this. I'm like, you know what? When you go to the cloud, do you get into that level of detail? Do you just go, I want this? This is what it needs to do? Think that way into your own internal systems. Think that you are a service provider for the business. Standardized. If you have 50 different laptop models, how are you ever going to blow down an image and keep it updated and solve problems? Move to building platforms, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. And then everything is connected. The big thing that I want that IT folks do, we focus on technology. We focus on building technology stacks. And I'm going to talk about this in just a second, but stop thinking in technology stacks and start thinking in systems. This is how you start driving innovation. Hard questions to ask your organization and, more importantly, yourself. If your business got taken down, how long would it take you to recover? And is that going to be a highly automated process? Or is that going to be a lot of people sweating bullets working 24-hour days? And this goes back to the part I always like to talk to. I tell folks, this is pretend you are the annoying kindergartner that keeps asking why for everything. Why are we doing that? My wife loves to do this to me. I'll be sweating over something, and she goes, why are you doing that? And then I come up with this really long explanation. She goes, I still don't understand why you're doing this, because couldn't you just do something different? I'm like, well, yes, but we've always done it this way. And this is what I want you guys to start thinking about. I call it the tyranny of the status quo. This is the way you've always done it. We've always delivered DVDs by mail. We've always done DVDs and VHS tapes. We've always ordered things this way. We've always delivered IT this way. That's where you are today. Think about across other industries. Where do you actually want to be? Where does the business want to be? What does the business want to look like in 2030? The average age of an organization, it used to be 100 years. What is it now, Steve? Like 18 is the average age of a large organization that's successful. Where do you want to be? And then you got to work backwards from that to envision the future. Stop saying we do it this way because this is the way we've always done it. Think about, what if we did something different? This is why I like to bring stakeholders in that don't know anything about IT, because they're the first persons that are going to be like, this is really kind of annoying. Why do we do that? And if you find yourself having to have a conversation that lasts more than, say, 5 bullet points, chances are you've got tyranny of the status quo. You're not thinking innovatively. You're thinking about CYA. You're thinking about keep the operations running, not move the business forward. So which one of these is the best tool? Depends on the job. If you had a sexy plumber show up at your house and all he had was a monkey wrench, you'd probably be a little bit concerned. Why do I bring this up? Because in IT, we get focused on a thing. Oh, we have to do things this way. We have to do VMware. Oh, we have to do cloud. We have to do AI. We have to do, well, do you have to do it? Think about what you're actually trying to accomplish and then figure out what the right tool is. Don't come up and say, this is the tool that I'm going to use. Let me go find the problem to solve with it. That's how you waste a lot of time, money, and effort. And that's also how you drive a lot of risk. So, foundations for innovation. Anybody here ever played with Legos? Yeah, right? 2,200 different shapes. Love this stat. 6 bricks. I can make 950 million different ways to combine them. Think about that. Now, going back to that conversation about technology stacks. When you think about your IT, do you think about laptops and desktops and servers and storage and virtualization and databases and cloud and AI? Or do you think about, what does the business do? What solutions are they trying to solve for? What systems do we have? This concept that when you think about systems thinking, they think about edges and nodes. How does data move through the organization? How do those processes intersect with people? Because if you do that, you start thinking about all the pieces that intersect with each other. That is how you drive this empowering capability that IT should be delivering to drive, on the next click, innovation. Think in systems. Think in workflows. Everybody here familiar with the term of shadow IT? Right? How many people here are out there trying to squash shadow IT? Okay. If you're out there trying to squash shadow IT, you are actually squashing innovation in your organization. Anywhere that shadow IT is because IT delivers a worse service than someplace else. Think about it. I've been in, right? If I make it so hard for an end user to do their job that they would rather go someplace else, how am I ever going to fund innovation? Because no one trusts me. They'd rather go someplace else. Embrace your shadow IT users. They are your best critics. They are the ones that are going to teach you everything that you're doing wrong. Because if you get those people in, they start to become advocates. And they start to teach you about what you need for the business to grow. As Chris Kringle said, right, all of everything we've talked about, this is a lot of things. There's a lot of changes that need to happen. Ask these hard questions. This is how you start driving that innovation. Here's a framework that I like to use with people. What should I be doing? How should we be thinking about innovation? How much special knowledge is there in the organization? What's my risk? What's my effort? And what's my differentiation? How many people here have development organizations? How many people here, your development organization is sustaining an application that you could go and buy off the shelf? Why? Why? Keep asking those whys, right? I had a customer that I work with. They're a high-tech customer. They write software, and I love these guys. I've had this conversation with them. I absolutely love them. I came to them and I said, you know, I have some software-defined storage that we could put in place so your developers could develop more efficiently. And they said, no, it just doesn't meet this one thing we want. And so they have 3 developers on staff to write a NAS. 3 developers that they're paying. That they pay to build and sustain the development effort to deliver a NAS. Why? Because they didn't think about what they could be doing with that effort. They didn't think about where they could be moving themselves. So be thinking about these things. I know I'm almost up with time, so I wanted to think about it, right? Going back to there's no best tool. Anybody here have a cloud-first strategy? Congratulations, you have a hammer-first strategy. Right? Technology is a tool. Use the best tool for the job at hand. There is a reason I have people coming to me going, we were doing this stuff in the cloud and our cloud costs ballooned, and so now we're trying to figure out how we should rebalance our workloads. Because you know what? Some of the things we want to do, there's trade-offs. Enterprise architecture is about balloon animals, right? You solve one problem and a new bottleneck kicks out. Cloud smart, not cloud first. Right tool for the right job. Make data available to everybody. Design in resiliency. All of these things are the ways to be thinking about your technology stack going forward. Decomposing everything you do, critical thinking, you're going to talk to us about, right? Decomposing the problem and figuring out the right solutions for the right components. So, how do you start? Real simple. Grab a stakeholder. Grab one of those people that's doing shadow IT. Figure out what they're trying to solve for. Do a pilot. Get those stakeholders involved. Find out what the data is. Map out that process. This is a way to start simple and start small. Incremental innovation. Because part of what that incremental innovation is going to do is it's going to help you guys reinvent your reputation inside the organization. So, now I have to pay my bills. So I'm going to talk real quickly about Lenovo, right? So this is the way I talk about Lenovo, right? My job is to provide the tools for you through my tech innovation so you can transform your organization and drive that innovation. And I do that by three things. We make a lot of sexy plumbing. We have a lot of engineering people. I may not always be the cheapest, but I can tell you that generally our stuff runs faster, runs longer, runs more secure, which means you spend less time focusing on technology and more time focusing on outcomes. There's a reason I'm standing here speaking to you guys at QBITS, because I succeed by partnering with Quadbridge, with Microsoft, with a lot of the folks that are here. And the last thing is, because I make a little bit of everything, part of what my job is, remember I said I'm human duct tape? Part of my job is to go and say, hey, server guy, this guy that's making PCs, they're doing this really cool thing. Maybe you should talk to him. Right? That's what I want you guys to get to. Here's just, those fancy proof points. Like I said, spend less time dealing with it, more per dollar, more secure. And this is the way I want you guys to be thinking about your IT. This is the way I'm structuring our internal delivery. I make sexy plumbing that you can assemble into a platform to build innovation on, a bathroom that then gets added to a solution to solve a business problem, a house, right? Plumbing, bathroom, the house. Think about doing that for you guys. What is the core technology you're delivering? What is the business building on that platform? And what's the solutions that the business needs? And I'll skip through that. That's AI. Skip through that. Basically, that says I do everything, including power the cloud. But here's the piece I want to get to finish off. I've said it hundreds of times. Ask yourself why. Simple thing. Every new startup that comes to me, every technology business partner that comes to me and says, hey, I've got this new invention. I have it in the back of the deck. I call it the 5 bullet point rule. If you can't explain to me what you do in 5 bullet points, you have no earthly idea what you're doing. Real simple. Whoops. So again, you'll get this deck. It's a whole set of books that I'd recommend you guys look at. This is going to help you create that innovation mindset, that transformation mindset. And you see the very first one. Start with why. I think I'm a little bit over, but don't worry, you'll get the deck. Those are all hyperlinks, I promise. That's all I have. So hopefully this was useful. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you in sessions.